The Galactic Council had been running smoothly for 17,000 cycles. 17,000 cycles of careful diplomacy, measured responses, and absolutely zero surprises. We liked it that way. Predictable. Safe. Boring, if you want to be honest about it. Then the humans showed up. And well, let me tell you how spectacularly that went wrong. My name is Vex Toral, and I'm what you'd call a military analyst for the Council's Strategic Defense Initiative. Fancy title for someone who watches holoscreens all day and writes reports nobody reads. At least, that's what I used to do before Karsis Prime. Before everything changed. Before I learned that sometimes the monsters under your sleeping pod are real, and sometimes they're on your side. The whole mess started 6 rotations ago when the Krell Dominion decided they'd had enough of playing nice. The Krell, for those of you fortunate enough to never have met them, are 8-foot-tall insectoid nightmares with a fondness for enslaving entire planets, and a complete lack of anything resembling mercy. They'd been pushing at Council borders for cycles, testing our defenses, probing for weakness. Karsis Prime was that weakness. A mining colony. 14,000 civilians. Mostly Vendari families who'd settled there 3 generations back, pulling rare minerals from the asteroid fields. Not strategic, not important, just people trying to live their lives. The kind of place the Krell loved to hit because they knew we wouldn't risk a full-scale war over it. They were right, of course. We wouldn't. But the humans? Nobody asked the humans what they'd risk. I was in the command center when the distress signal came through. Admiral Kickstar, a Borvanian with more medals than sense, was running the tactical display with the enthusiasm of someone organizing a funeral. His third set of arms gestured at the holographic representation of Karsis Prime while he droned on about acceptable losses and strategic withdrawals. The Krell have deployed 4 battle cruisers, he said, his translator giving his voice that typical Borvanian rumble. Estimated civilian casualties, 92% within the first rotation. We can have a response fleet there in 6 rotations, but by then, he didn't finish. He didn't need to. What about the human frigate? Someone asked. I think it was Lara from Intelligence. She had a habit of asking uncomfortable questions. Kickstar's facial plates rippled with what I'd learned was irritation. The Terran vessel Mercury's Fury is indeed in the adjacent sector. However, protocol dictates that we cannot authorize military action by non-council primary forces without a full committee vote, which required 3 rotations. Tara finished. So, we're going to let 14,000 people die because of paperwork? Procedure, Kickstar corrected, as if that made it better. That's when Captain James Hendricks walked into the command center, uninvited and completely unconcerned about the 6 security officers who'd failed to stop him. The man looked exactly like you'd expect a human to look if you designed one specifically to make bureaucrats nervous. Tall, broad-shouldered, with these unsettling blue eyes that seemed to see right through our carefully constructed regulations. He was wearing what humans call a dress uniform. Dark blue with more colored ribbons than I could count. Later I learned each one represented some act of violence or bravery, though with humans those 2 things seemed uncomfortably intertwined. Captain Hendricks, Kickstar said, his tone dropping several degrees. This is a restricted strategic session. You have no authorization to be here. Yeah, I noticed, Hendricks replied, his mouth doing that thing humans do when they find something amusing but not actually funny. A smile but wrong somehow. I also noticed you're having a real interesting conversation about those folks on Karsis Prime, the ones being slaughtered right now while we sit here counting bureaucratic angels on the head of a pin. We are following established protocol, Kickstar insisted. Right, protocol. How many people died per protocol? Exactly. Is there a conversion chart, or do you just eyeball it? The room went silent. You didn't talk to Admiral Kickstar like that. You didn't talk to anyone on the council like that. The Borvanian's plates flushed a deep purple that definitely meant anger. The Terran Defense Force, Hendricks continued, has standing orders to render humanitarian aid wherever possible. I've got 200 Marines on my ship who are ready to drop in 20 minutes. So you can hold the Krell until your response fleet arrives. We can save those people. Absolutely not, Kickstar said. The Mercury's Fury is a single frigate against 4 Krell battle cruisers. It would be suicide. Furthermore, unauthorized military action by human forces would create a diplomatic incident that could what? Make the Krell mad? Newsflash, Admiral, they're already pretty mad. They're expressing their feelings by killing civilians. I watched Hendricks carefully during this exchange, trying to understand what I was seeing. There was no fear in him. None. Either humans were biologically incapable of properly assessing danger, or this particular human had something seriously wrong with his threat evaluation systems. Turns out, it was a bit of both. Your concern is noted, Captain, Kickstar said with all the warmth of a dying star. But the Council cannot authorize your proposed action. You will remain in your current position and await further orders." Hendricks nodded slowly like he'd expected exactly that response. "Well then, Admiral, I guess it's real fortunate that I'm not asking for authorization." He turned and walked out before anyone could stop him. Not that stopping him would have mattered. As we found out 17 minutes later, when the Mercury's Fury broke orbit and went to full burn toward Karsis Prime, humans had a special relationship with orders they didn't like. They ignored them. The command center erupted into chaos. Kixthar was bellowing about courts-martial and violations of treaty law. Kelnara was trying to pull up tactical data on the Mercury's Fury, as if knowing its weapons loadout would somehow make the situation less insane. Half the junior officers were placing bets on how quickly the human ship would be destroyed. I just watched the sensor feeds and wondered if I was about to witness the shortest rescue mission in galactic history. The Mercury's Fury was what humans classified as a light frigate. In Council terms, that meant it was a scout ship with delusions of grandeur. Crew complement of about 300, including those 200 Marines Hendricks had mentioned. Armament consisted of 6 railgun batteries, a couple of missile pods, and some point defense lasers. Respectable for patrol duty, absolutely worthless against 4 Krell battle cruisers, or so we thought. The ship reached Karsis Prime in 3 hours, running its engines hot enough that our sensors registered hull stress warnings. Any sane crew would have been terrified of structural failure. The humans apparently considered it efficient. By the time they arrived, the Krell had already begun orbital bombardment of the main colony settlement. Our long-range visuals showed buildings burning, defense shields failing, people running through streets that were turning into graves. The Krell battle cruisers sat in high orbit like bloated carrion birds, methodically destroying everything below. "Mercury's Fury is broadcasting on all frequencies," one of the sensor techs reported. "Audio only." "Let's hear it," Kixthar commanded, probably hoping for a surrender that would at least make the paperwork easier. What we heard instead was Captain James Hendricks doing something that would get repeated in military academies across the galaxy for the next 1,000 cycles. Something so perfectly insanely human that it still gives me nightmares. He laughed, not a nervous laugh, not a fearful laugh, a genuine, almost delighted laugh, like someone had just told him the universe's best joke, and the punchline was 4 Krell battle cruisers, Krell vessels. His voice came through the speakers, and I could hear that smile again. "This is Captain James Hendricks of the Terran Defense Force ship Mercury's Fury. You are engaged in hostile military action against civilian targets, in violation of approximately 17 different Council laws that I can't be bothered to remember right now. You will cease bombardment immediately and withdraw from this system. You have 60 seconds to comply." The entire command center stared at the speakers like they'd started speaking in colors. "Did he just?" someone whispered. "He did," Kelnara confirmed. And was that admiration in her voice? The Krell response was predictable. They didn't bother with words. They just retargeted their weapons and fired everything they had at the Mercury's Fury, which was when we learned something important about human ship design. Something we probably should have asked about during the technology exchange treaties. Something that explained why human vessels looked so absurdly over-engineered. They were built for this. The Mercury's Fury's engines flared to full power, and the ship moved. Not the careful, calculated movements of a Council vessel following optimal flight paths. This was violent, aggressive maneuvering that should have turned the crew into paste. The frigate twisted through the Krell firing solution like it was dancing. Point defense lasers tracking and destroying incoming fire with computer precision. Not a single hit. "That's impossible," Kixthar muttered. "The inertial forces alone should—" "Humans call it compensator technology," Kelnara said, pulling up technical files. "According to their specs, their inertial dampeners can handle up to 40 G maneuvers for short periods. We cap ours at 12 because anything higher is considered unsafe. Unsafe for sane species," I added, watching the human ship perform another physics-defying turn. The Mercury's Fury wasn't just dodging, though. It was moving with purpose, driving straight toward the Krell formation like a predator that had spotted prey. The railguns opened up, 6 barrels of magnetically accelerated hate that punched through Krell shields like they weren't even there. Here's something about the Krell. Their battle cruisers are designed to fight other large ships. Massive shields, heavy armor, devastating firepower. What they're not designed for is a small, fast target that refuses to follow conventional tactical doctrine. A target that treats the laws of physics as polite suggestions. The first Krell cruiser lost its port shield generator to a railgun salvo that hit with such precision that our targeting computers flagged it as a statistical anomaly. The second cruiser made the mistake of trying to bracket the human ship with a crossfire pattern. only to watch the Mercury's Fury drop below the orbital plane using the planet's gravity well to slingshot back up behind them. That's when the Marines deployed. I'd never seen a human combat drop before. Council military doctrine favored careful, controlled landing operations with extensive air support and prepared landing zones. The humans favored what they called aggressive insertion, which apparently meant shoving 200 armored soldiers out of airlocks and letting gravity do most of the work. They fell like meteors streaking through the atmosphere in individual drop pods that our sensors could barely track. The Krell tried to shoot them down. They hit maybe 10%. The rest crashed into the colony settlement at terminal velocity, and I swear I could see the impact craters from orbit. Any sane species would have died on impact. The humans emerged from their pods angry and ready to fight. Ground forces are reporting contact with Krell infantry, the communications officer announced. Human Marines are. Admiral, you need to see this. The tactical feed switched to ground-level cameras. What I saw would fuel my nightmares for cycles to come. Human Marines moved like nothing I'd ever witnessed. They fought like each one was personally offended by the existence of Krell soldiers, small unit tactics that flowed like water, overwhelming firepower delivered with surgical precision, and a complete disregard for their own safety that bordered on suicidal. Except they weren't dying. The Krell, one human, his armor scorched and dented, charged a Krell position with nothing but a broken rifle and what appeared to be pure spite. He used the rifle as a club, beating a Krell warrior to death with it while taking hits that should have killed him 3 times over. When the rifle finally broke completely, he switched to his bare hands. Another human, call sign Widow, according to the comm chatter, held an entire street against a Krell assault squad with a weapon that fired explosive rounds at a rate that made our heavy weapons look gentle. She was laughing, actually laughing, while turning Krell soldiers into purple men and their medic. By all the stars in the void, their medic was terrifying. A woman named Patricia Kovac who carried wounded civilians through active combat zones while simultaneously providing covering fire with one hand. She took a plasma round to the shoulder that would have vaporized most species and just kept moving, treating the wound as a minor inconvenience. They're insane, Kixar whispered. No, Kael'Taria corrected, her eyes fixed on the feeds. They're winning. She was right. Against every logical prediction, against all tactical analysis, the humans were pushing the Krell back. 200 Marines against an entire invasion force, and they were winning through sheer bloody-minded refusal to accept any other outcome. Above the planet, Captain Hendricks was conducting a masterclass in what humans called aggressive negotiations. The Mercury's Fury had crippled 2 of the 4 Krell cruisers, and was currently playing the most dangerous game of chicken I'd ever witnessed with the third. Both ships were on collision course, weapons firing, neither willing to break off. Guess which one blinked first? The Krell cruiser broke hard to starboard, exposing its reactor housing. The Mercury's Fury put 3 railgun rounds through it. The explosion was visible from the command center. The 4th cruiser decided it had seen enough and initiated emergency jump procedures. It would have made it too if the humans hadn't already calculated its escape vector and positioned a spread of missiles directly in its path. The resulting debris field was going to mess up Karsis Prime's orbital traffic for the next 100 cycles. 6 hours after arrival, Captain James Hendricks stood in the remains of the colony's main square, surrounded by 14,000 very alive civilians, and a lot of very dead Krell. His uniform was torn, his face was covered in soot, and what I really hoped wasn't blood, and he was grinning like he'd just won the galaxy's best prize. Mercury's Fury to Council Command, his voice came through the speakers. Mission accomplished. Karsis Prime is secure. Civilian casualties, 147. Could have been 0 if we'd gotten here sooner, but hey, protocol, right? The command center was silent. Absolutely silent. What were you supposed to say to that? Congratulations on violating every military regulation we have. Thank you for making our entire defense fleet look like incompetent cowards. Sorry we tried to stop you from saving 14,000 lives. Admiral Kixthar's faceplates had gone through about 17 different colors, finally settling on a shade I'd never seen before and couldn't interpret. Captain Hendricks, he finally managed. You will return to Council space immediately to face charges of insubordination, violation of treaty protocols, unauthorized military action, and saving 14,000 lives, Hendricks interrupted. Don't forget that one, Admiral. Make sure it's on the official report, right at the top. In big letters, he cut the transmission. That should have been the end of it. A diplomatic incident. Some strongly worded complaints, maybe a formal censure of the Terran Defense Force. The kind of thing that gets sorted out in committee meetings and forgotten in a cycle or two. But then the reports started coming in from the Krell survivors. The ones who'd been pulled from their wrecked cruisers by Council rescue ships. The ones who'd witnessed what happened on Karsis Prime. They weren't just defeated. They were terrified. These were Krell warriors, the most feared military force in 3 sectors. They'd conquered a dozen species without breaking a sweat. They ate fear for breakfast, and excreted tactical superiority, and they were absolutely, genuinely terrified of humans. They don't stop, one Krell officer kept repeating during his debriefing. His translator was glitching because his mandibles wouldn't stop shaking. You hit them, they keep coming. You wound them, they keep fighting. You kill them, and the ones behind them get angry. Not afraid. Angry. What kind of species gets angry when you kill them? Another survivor told interrogators about the human who'd beaten his squadmate to death with a broken weapon. He should have died. We hit him 7 times. 7 confirmed plasma hits. He just would not stop. Kept coming. Kept hitting. Even when my squad leader finally put him down, he was still trying to crawl toward us. Still trying to fight. The medical reports on the human casualties were almost as disturbing. Wounds that should have been fatal, treated as minor inconveniences. Blood loss that would kill most species in minutes, shrugged off with chemical stimulants and spite. 3 Marines had continued fighting after losing limb. 1 had died only after achieving her objective and ensuring her squadmates were clear. They called it mission before self. We called it insanity, but it worked. By all the laws of tactics and logic, it shouldn't have, but it did. Word spread fast in the military community. The Krell started avoiding systems with human presence. Other aggressive species took note and adjusted their expansion plans. Within 2 rotations, human Marines had developed a reputation that made hardened warriors nervous. The Council, in its infinite wisdom, decided this was a problem. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called exactly 8 rotations after Karsis Prime. I got dragged into it because apparently someone needed to present the tactical analysis, and I was the unfortunate soul who'd watched the whole thing unfold. Lucky me. The council chambers were packed. Representatives from 47 member species all talking at once, all terrified of the same thing. Not the Krell, not the dozen other hostile powers lurking at our borders. No, they were scared of the species that had just saved 14,000 civilians, because that's how the galaxy works. Logic is optional, but fear? Fear is universal. Ambassador Tila Morn from Earth sat in the human delegation section, looking about as comfortable as someone sitting in a nest of venomous serpents. She was older than Captain Hendricks, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much bureaucratic nonsense to be surprised by anything. Next to her sat General Marcus Webb, head of the Terran Defense Force, who looked like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. High Chancellor Vorath called the session to order with his ceremonial staff, a 3-meter-long piece of carved stone that was supposed to represent the weight of galactic governance. Mostly it just made a loud noise when he banged it on the floor. "We are here," Vorath announced, his 6 vocal cords creating that weird harmonic effect his species was known for, to address the incident at Karsis Prime and determine appropriate measures regarding human military forces within Council space. "Appropriate measures," General Webb muttered, loud enough for the microphones to catch. "Is that what we're calling gratitude now?" Vorath's eye stalk swiveled toward him. "General Webb, you will have an opportunity to speak. Currently the floor recognizes Ambassador Tila Morn of Earth." Ambassador Morn stood, smoothing her formal robes. "Thank you, High Chancellor. I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about what happened at Karsis Prime. Captain Hendricks and his crew responded to a humanitarian crisis when no one else would. They saved 14,000 lives at tremendous risk to themselves. Instead of gratitude, we're facing what appears to be a disciplinary hearing. Could someone please explain what exactly we did wrong? You violated approximately 47 different military protocols," Admiral Kixthar responded, standing from his own seat. "You engaged in unauthorized combat operations. You ignored direct orders to stand down. You created a diplomatic incident with the Krell Dominion. The Krell were slaughtering civilians." Morn shot back. "What diplomatic incident? They started it when they decided murder was an acceptable negotiating tactic." "The issue is not what the Krell did," interjected Senator Plix from the Votari Collective, his 3 heads bobbing in that unsettling way they had. "The issue is how your forces responded. We have reviewed the tactical data. We have seen the combat recording. Your Marines fought with a level of aggression and disregard for personal safety that is frankly disturbing." "They fought effectively," Morn corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" This came from Representative Kix, a Borvanian like Kixthar. "We have testimony from captured Krell indicating that your soldiers continued fighting after sustaining wounds that should have been immediately fatal. We have documented cases of humans using broken weapons as melee tools. We have recorded instances of your Marines laughing during combat operations. This is not normal military behavior. This is pathological." I watched General Webb's jaw clench. The man was practically vibrating with controlled fury. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You're upset that my Marines were too effective? That they didn't die quickly enough for your comfort? That they had the audacity to maintain morale during combat operations?" "We are concerned," High Chancellor Vorath said carefully, "that human military psychology is incompatible with Council military doctrine. Your soldiers appear to operate without proper regard for acceptable casualty ratios, strategic withdrawal parameters, or proportional response guidelines." "Proportional response," Webb repeated slowly. "You want us to respond proportionally to genocide? We want you to follow established military protocols that have maintained galactic peace for thousands of cycles. Your protocols were going to let 14,000 people die." The chamber erupted into arguments. Half the representatives were agreeing with Vorath. The other half were actually defending the humans, and a small group in the back appeared to be taking bets on how badly this was going to end. I noticed Kale Nara in that group, which didn't surprise me at all. Vorath banged his staff 3 times, and eventually, the noise died down. "We have also received concerning reports from multiple sources," he continued, "regarding human military capabilities that were not disclosed during the technology exchange treaties. Inertial dampening systems capable of sustaining 40G maneuvers, personal armor that can withstand plasma weapons fire, chemical enhancement systems that allow soldiers to continue fighting despite catastrophic injuries. These capabilities were never mentioned during negotiation." "Because you never asked," Ambassador Morn replied flatly. "We provided all requested technical specifications for our civilian and standard military technology. You didn't ask about our combat doctrine or our marine equipment because you assumed we'd use your tactical frameworks. That's not deception. That's you making assumptions. The point remains," Senator Plix insisted, "that human military forces represent an unknown and potentially destabilizing factor in galactic security. We saved 14,000 lives." Morn's voice rose for the first time, her professional calm cracking. "We stopped a massacre. We protected Council citizens when your own forces couldn't or wouldn't. And now you're treating us like we're the threat." "You are a threat," Representative Kick said bluntly. "Perhaps not intentionally, but your very presence changes military calculations across the galaxy. The Krell are retreating from sectors they've held for cycles because they're afraid of encountering human forces. The Vex conglomerate has requested that no human vessels patrol within 10 light-years of their borders. 3 different species have filed formal complaints about human Marines being too intimidating during joint training exercises." "Too intimidating," Webb said. "We're too intimidating because we're competent. You're intimidating because you fight like you're insane," Kick shot back. "We have video of one of your Marines charging a Krell heavy weapons position with nothing but a combat knife and what your own report describes as tactical aggression. He killed 6 Krell before they finally brought him down. That's not competence. That's madness." "That was Corporal Davis," Webb said quietly. "He charged that position because it was firing on civilians. He drew their attention so his squad could flank them, and shut it down. Which they did, saving 47 people in the process. He got a medal for that. Posthumously." The chamber went quiet for a moment. "That's exactly our point," Vorath said softly. "Your species views suicidal charges as acts of heroism. You celebrate behavior that any rational military force would classify as unacceptable risk-taking. This fundamental difference in military psychology makes integration of human forces into Council operations extremely problematic." I'd been sitting there listening to this whole mess trying to stay out of it, but something about that statement made my translator spines itch. I checked the tactical reports again, cross-referencing them with standard Council military doctrine. Then I saw it. I stood up, which was apparently not protocol because half the chamber turned to stare at me. "Analyst Vex Toro," Vorath said with obvious surprise. "You have something to add?" "Yeah, actually I do." I pulled up my data slate, projecting the numbers onto the central display. I've been running comparisons between human military actions and standard Council operations. You want to know what's really interesting? Human casualty rates. "We are aware that humans accept higher casualties," Kickstar began. "No, you're not listening. Their casualty rates are lower, significantly lower." I highlighted the relevant data. At Karsis Prime, 200 Marines engaged a Krell force estimated at over 2,000. Human casualties were 43 wounded, 12 killed. Civilian casualties were 147. Compare that to our own projections for a Council rescue operation, which estimated military casualties of 60 to 70% and civilian casualties of over 90%. The humans didn't just win, they won while losing fewer people than we would have. "That's impossible," someone muttered. "It's right here in the data." "You know why?" Because humans don't accept casualties. They're aggressive because aggression saves lives. They charge positions because waiting gets people killed. They use overwhelming force because half measures cost more in the long run. Everything you're calling insane is actually them minimizing casualties through superior tactics. Superior tactics that involve ignoring fatal wounds and continuing to fight, Kix argued. Superior first aid and combat medicine. I corrected. I reviewed their medical protocols. Humans carry advanced trauma treatment in individual kits that most species reserve for hospital facilities. Their combat medics are trained to perform surgery under fire. They use chemical stimulants not because they're crazy but because keeping a wounded soldier conscious and mobile for another 10 minutes can mean the difference between evacuation and death. I was on a roll now, and yeah, maybe I was enjoying watching the council squirm a little. You want to know what else I found? Human units have a 97% mission success rate in hostile engagements. Council forces average 63%. Humans complete objectives in an average of 40% less time than projected for council operations. And here's the really fun part. They do it while causing less collateral damage than we do. How is that possible when they use such aggressive tactics? Vorath asked. Because they're not aggressive, they're precise. What looks like reckless charging is actually carefully calculated assault doctrine designed to overwhelm enemy decision-making cycles. What looks like excessive force is concentrated application of firepower on specific targets to minimize overall destruction. They've been fighting wars for their entire evolutionary history. They've gotten really, really good at it. The chamber was silent again. But it was a different kind of silence. A thinking silence. This doesn't change the fundamental problem, Senator Plix finally said. Human military capabilities and psychology are incompatible with council doctrine. Integration is impossible. Then don't integrate us, General Webb said, standing up. We never asked to be part of your military command structure. We have our own defense force. We'll continue operating under our own protocols. That is unacceptable, Kixare responded. All council member species must integrate their military forces under unified command. It's a fundamental requirement of membership. Then maybe we shouldn't be members. Ambassador Morn said quietly. The chamber exploded. Representatives shouting, translators struggling to keep up, Vorath banging his staff so hard, I thought he might break it. This had escalated from a disciplinary hearing to a potential diplomatic crisis in about 30 seconds. Order. Vorath bellowed his 6 vocal cords, creating a sound that hurt. Order. Ambassador Morn, are you seriously suggesting that Earth would withdraw from the Galactic Council over this issue? I'm suggesting that if membership requires us to abandon our own people to die while waiting for committee approvals, then membership isn't worth having. Morn replied. Captain Hendricks saved 14,000 lives. You want to punish him for it. What exactly is Earth supposed to learn from that? You're supposed to learn to follow proper channels, Kixthar said. We did follow proper channels. We requested authorization to respond. You denied it. So we responded anyway because saving lives mattered more than your approval. If that's a problem, then yes, maybe we need to reconsider our relationship with the Council. I could see the calculations happening behind Vorath's eyes. Losing Earth would be bad. They were a major economic power, controlled key trade routes, and their technology was proving more advanced than initially assessed. But more than that, I realized Vorath was scared, because if the humans left, who would save the next 14,000 civilians? Who would stop the next Krell attack? The Council fleet that needed 6 rotations to respond. The military doctrine that prioritized procedure over life. There may be a compromise, Kel Telnera said, standing from her position. Everyone turned to look at her, including me. She just smiled that predatory smile of hers. The humans clearly cannot be integrated into standard Council military operations. Their doctrine is too different, their capabilities too specialized. But that doesn't mean they can't serve a purpose. What are you suggesting? Vorath asked warily. Make them what they already are. A rapid response force. When situations arise that require immediate action, situations where Council protocol is too slow, deploy the humans. Give them authorization to operate independently with broad mission parameters. Let them be the emergency option. That would require giving them tremendous operational freedom. Kixthar objected. Yes, it would. But it would also mean that the next time 14,000 civilians are dying, we have an option besides watching it happen. And it keeps human forces separate from standard Council operations, which seems to be everyone's main concern. I watched the representatives processing this. It was actually brilliant in a twisted way. Give the humans what they wanted. Autonomy and authority to act, while also isolating them from the rest of Council military operations. Keep the dangerous humans at arm's length, but pointed at external threats. This proposal has merit, Voreth admitted slowly. However, there would need to be strict limitations, rules of engagement, oversight mechanisms, accountability measure. We can discuss terms, Ambassador Morn said. But I want one thing clear. If you authorize a human response to a crisis, you don't get to second-guess our methods afterward. You either trust us to do the job, or you don't deploy us at all. No more of this sending us in and then complaining that we were too effective. That seems reasonable, Varath agreed. Though I suspect we'll need multiple sessions to work out the details. I look forward to many boring meetings, Morn said with a slight smile. And that should have been it. A compromise reached. A new framework established. Everyone going home moderately unhappy but functional. Politics as usual, except the universe has a sense of humor. 3 rotations later, the Vex conglomerate attacked one of our agricultural stations in the Outer Rim. 4,000 colonists, mostly farmers and their families, cut off and under siege. The Vex wanted the station because it controlled a valuable hydroponics technology they'd been trying to steal for cycles. The council convened an emergency session. Kixthar presented a response plan that would take 5 rotations to implement. The Vex would probably kill everyone in 3. High Chancellor Varath looked at the humans. This appears to be exactly the sort of situation we discussed, he said carefully. Would the Terran Defense Force be willing to respond? General Webb checked his data slate. We have the carrier Indomitable in the adjacent sector. They could be there in 8 hours. But I need absolute confirmation. You're authorizing us to handle this our way? Yes, Varath said. And I could see how much that cost him. Full operational authority. Just save those people. Understood. We'll have them home by breakfast. It wasn't breakfast, it was lunch. Took them 11 hours total, including travel time. The Vex had deployed 6 ships, and over 1,000 assault troops. The humans brought 1 carrier, 300 Marines, and a level of tactical violence that made Karsis Prime look restrained. I watched the whole thing from the command center again, along with about half the council representatives. We couldn't help ourselves. It was like watching a natural disaster that someone had taught military strategy. The Marines hit the station like a kinetic strike, drop pods screaming through defensive fire that should have shredded them. They didn't bother with establishing a perimeter or securing landing zones. They just dropped directly on top of Vex positions and started shooting. The Vex never knew what hit them. Within 2 hours, the humans had retaken the entire station. Vex casualties were estimated at 95%. Human casualties were 6 wounded, 0 killed. Civilian casualties were 0. That's when I think the council really understood what they'd agreed to. The humans weren't just good at fighting, they were terrifyingly, impossibly good at it. And now we'd given them official authorization to do it whenever they wanted. The Vex withdrew from the sector entirely. Word spread even faster this time. Within a cycle, 3 different hostile powers had requested non-aggression pacts with Earth. 2 others just stopped their expansion plans altogether. And the Krell? The Krell requested a formal peace treaty and offered to pay reparations for Karsis Prime. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. You don't mess with humans, not because they're cruel or aggressive or unreasonable, but because when you threaten innocent people, they will come for you with a level of focused intensity that makes supernovas look gentle. 6 cycles later, I was still working in the command center, still analyzing tactical data, still watching humans do impossible things on a regular basis. We'd deployed them 17 times in those 6 cycles, 17 emergencies that would have been massacres under council response times. 17 times the humans had saved people. Everyone else had written off. And yeah, they scared us. They scared everyone. But you know what's funny? They scared our enemies more. Captain James Hendricks got promoted to admiral, much to his obvious annoyance. He'd apparently preferred being in the field to pushing paperwork, but someone needed to coordinate the rapid response operations. Last I heard, he was making Kixthar's life difficult by submitting after-action reports written in sarcasm and informal language. I ran into him once, in a corridor outside the council chambers. He was heading to another meeting about operational parameters, looking about as enthusiastic as someone facing a dental procedure. "Admiral," I said, nodding respectfully. "Analyst," he replied, then paused. "Vex it all, right? You did the presentation. The one about our casualty rates. That was me. Probably got myself in trouble with it. Or you saved a few thousand lives by making them understand we're not actually crazy." He smiled. That unsettling human smile. "Thanks for that. Just did the math. The numbers don't lie." No, they don't. But people do, and they were lying to themselves about what happened at Karsis Prime. Easier to call us insane than admit their system failed. He checked his chronometer. I've got to go pretend to care about proper comma usage in military reports. You ever need anything? Look me up. I watched him walk away. This human who'd started a galactic incident by saving lives and ended up changing how the entire council thought about military operations. 3 cycles after that conversation, the council passed Resolution 8047, officially titled the Emergency Response Protocols Act. Unofficially, everyone called it the Hendricks Doctrine. It formalized the Human Rapid Response Force, gave them unprecedented operational authority, and established a new framework for crisis intervention. It also included a provision that I'm pretty sure was added specifically to annoy Admiral Hendricks. All human military operations had to file detailed after-action reports within 48 hours of mission completion. The first report he submitted under the new rules was a masterpiece. 15 pages of tactical analysis, casualty figures, and operational outcomes, written entirely in haiku format. Kixthar nearly had a system failure. Kelnara laughed so hard she had to leave the room. I kept a copy because sometimes you need to remember that even in the middle of galactic politics and military crises, humans will find a way to be difficult just because they can. As for me, I am still here in the command center watching sensors and writing reports. But now when a crisis comes in, when civilians are dying and protocol says we can't help, I don't feel that helpless anger anymore, because now we call the humans, and the humans always answer. Sometimes the galaxy needs monsters to fight monsters. We just got lucky that our monsters care about saving people, even if they do it in the most terrifying way possible. The Karsis Prime incident taught the galaxy that humans are dangerous, unpredictable, and completely unwilling to follow proper military protocol when lives are on the line. It taught us to be afraid of them, but it also taught us something more important. When everything goes wrong, when the situation is impossible, when everyone else has given up, humans are exactly the kind of crazy you want on your side. They'll break every rule, ignore every regulation, and violate every tactical doctrine ever written, and they'll save everyone while doing it. That's why the galaxy was terrified of human soldiers after Karsis Prime. Not because they're violent or cruel or unreasonable, but because when they decide someone needs saving, nothing in the universe can stop them, not even us.